What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Fighting Words. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel, and there is quite a bit to talk about today, Anthony, and not very much of it will be positive. And that's unfortunate because I was listening to our show. I listened back like I always do, and I was like, man, we were just sorting through the rubble there for about 50 minutes the other day. And I'm like, hopefully we have a very different tone after a good series against the Cubs this week. And it started off well enough, but my God, the last two games were just brutal. And some of the worst baseball I've seen this team play really came over the past week. When I say this team, I mean this team dating back over the previous 2, 3, 4 years, this group. It's ugly right now. And it's not so much that they're 8-10. You know, like you go back and look at previous years, you go, it's the first 18 games. Who really cares? It's not like, Braves have gotten off to a very good start and they're coming in this weekend, but I'm not worried about the standings. I'm worried about the product. I'm worried about the quality of baseball that we're looking at here. And I want to talk about today, really, what is truly concerning long-term, where you kind of say, like, look, let's put aside the small sample size stuff. Let's put aside it's only April 17th stuff and say what might really be a problem and what can we look at that's going wrong when we say, I'm not so concerned about that. So it's really about realizing that this is all bad. It's almost all bad, but what's truly concerning and what is not. That's your job today.
Okay, I will do my best to do that. And I just want to apologize in advance to anybody who might be watching us on any of our platforms today. If the show looks bare bones and you're like, well, where's the logo? Where's all the maroon and blue? We didn't bail out on our branding. There's something wrong here with the StreamYard feed today. I'm not sure exactly what it is, and Russ is out of the area, so we can't get it fixed. So I apologize in advance, and I apologize to video guy Amadeo, who has to clip this up later on and has to put us out there and maybe has to do some extra work so that people know that it's Fighting Words. So apologies for that up front, but I'm ready to go, Bob. I'm ready to be the guy to tell you what you should worry about and what you shouldn't worry about.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, what a week to have the Flyers, ascendants here, because you get a reprieve. You didn't have to watch this in person this week, and you don't have to watch it in person this weekend because you got to go to Pittsburgh. So.
Yeah, it's like I'm leaving for Pittsburgh within the hour. So
silver linings for you. Yeah. All right. Well, look, I mean, you see what happens both Tuesday and Wednesday night, and I think about something that you talked about last year. The Phillies, it felt like for months, when they would lose games, it was like they competed. How many games that you could go back over weeks at a time and say they were in every single game. They either won it or they lost it at the end, or they were one swing away from winning the game. And that's the mark of a consistently good team. Forget the playoffs, but they compete night in, night out. That you buy tickets and you can reasonably expect for 2.5 hours that you're going to be entertained and at least talk yourself into them winning a baseball game, even if the result isn't there at the end.
Right.
What we saw this week was non-competitive at times, and it's very much different than the product that we watched for the bulk of last season. I know that they got off to a slow start at points. We had the frustrations against the Mets. It's not like it was all smooth sailing en route to 90-plus wins, but this felt a little different. I think almost certainly, I think for the first time, people are wondering, wait a minute, is it that they're going to fold in the playoffs again, or is it that could they maybe not even be good enough to get there? And I think that some people are starting to wonder if that's the case. Like, is there a floor of competence with this team, or is it possible that what you saw this past week might be where this thing's heading?
I will tell you that the thing that you brought up right away is one of my concerns, and that is that they have not been as competitive in the games that they lose. But I will tell you also that I am not as desperately jumping off of the bandwagon or the bridges that everybody else is either. I do think it's a concern. I also think that this team will improve from where it is now. I do not think that this is the Phillies all year. I do not think we're going to sit there and watch a bad team play baseball. There are things about the way they're playing that I think bother me, and like that's not good. That needs to be fixed. That should have been fixed before, and they let it go. Whatever. I mean, we could go into specifics, but holistically, if you look at the whole thing, I'm not there yet, Bob. I'm just not. I just don't think that this is what you're going to see all year. I don't think this is a 500 team. I don't think this is a sub 500 team. I still think this is a good team that's going to be fine ultimately. And I don't want to sound like a homer here, right? But let me just throw it this way to you. We all, you, me, all the fans, every writer, everyone thought signing Jesus Luzardo to a 5-year contract extension was a good idea, right? We all believe in this guy, and we still do in a lot of ways. I mean, 3 bad starts is not the end of the world. Let's just for kicks, let's just say that Luzardo had pitched the way Luzardo was supposed to pitch, right? In those 3 games.
Sure.
And maybe one other game you sit there and go, the bullpen blew a game that they shouldn't have blown. All right, let's just say so let's just say you have 4 games that kind of those 4 games you end up with a different result, right? Are we sitting here having the same conversation? I mean, we would still be looking at the things that are concerning. We would still find the negatives and say, let's identify them and talk about them because they could be a problem down the line. But I don't think everybody would be going crazy about firing the manager and getting rid of this hitting coach and trade this player or got to make this change. It's so bad. Like if a couple little things went another way.
Yeah, I mean, he's made 4 starts. 2 of them go better than they have. They're sitting here and they're 10-8 today with they're 2 games over 500. And by the way, I do you one more. Zach Wheeler is making these starts and not Taijuan Walker. Like maybe that's worth a win somewhere in the mix. Like, and then all of a sudden you're 3-4 games over 500. And we'd say like, obviously there's concerns about the offense, but there always have been. And this is kind of what we expected. I hear you. And you can do that when you have only played 18 games. It's easy to kind of say if you just turn the results of 2 or 3 of these, you'd feel a lot different about the overall, the big picture. And I agree with you. And I think that that's entirely fair. That being said, he didn't perform. And I still believe in him. I've been wrong about a lot. I believe in him. I thought that he'd be a Cy Young contender this year. I think a lot of people did as well. I would be shocked if he does not turn it around. He's really buried himself statistically in the early going. You have a 7+ ERA through 4 starts. It's going to take a while to mow that thing down, but I expect him to be better. And there are reasons to believe that he will be better. And if you want to get into that on a deeper level in a little bit, I'm happy to do it. I will say this, like, let's look at some numbers here. And we'll start with the offense because it always feels like it's about the offense, though I would make the argument that the pitching is what has let the Phillies down in a more alarming sense here in the early going. Phillies batting average as a team right now, 229. That's 23rd in all of baseball. 309 on base percentage is 22nd. 381 slug, that's 18th. They have an 8.7 walk rate, 22nd. Like they're not hitting for average. They don't walk a lot. They're not driving the baseball outside of Harper and Schwarber with any consistency in terms of power. This lineup, I think, is a cause for concern. We've also talked a lot about their inability to hit left-handed pitching, and they've been dismal. They're bottom 5 in almost every category against left-handed pitching, and make of that what you will. I think one of the reasons that that's the case is because Kyle Schwarber's not having the success against lefties that he did a year ago here in the early going. This offense is probably average at best. I believe that. One thing that I'm ready to say here is, yeah, sure, I believe in Kyle Schwarber. Does he hit 45 home runs plus? Probably. Bryce Harper, do I think he's going to have a 900-plus OPS at the end of the year? I think so, but I still think that this is an average at best offense. Tell me I'm wrong on that. Tell me where the improvement's coming from. I don't really see it, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on the offense because we talk about the offense all the time.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that the offense has become mediocre. And it's become mediocre because of a few reasons, and it's not your star players. Well, most of your star players. I think that you look at Trey Turner's been underwhelming. Do I think he can get back to what he was last year? I do, but he's been underwhelming so far. Obviously, Real Muto has tailed off even more. Although he did have a good game the other day, the first game of the series, right? I think he had 3 hits in that game, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's holding up statistically. Like if you showed me JT Realmuto through 3 weeks and you gave me 273 with a 759 OPS, I'd be like, well,
yeah,
what do you want? So
yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, like the player in general,
yes,
right, is not the same player he was 3 years ago. So you look at those guys and go, okay, they've tailed. And look, it's weird because I think Adolis Garcia is okay, right? Like I think he's been okay. He's not been great, but he's not been a disaster. He's been okay. It's the guys that you expected to be the ones that needed to take the next step that just never did.
Yeah.
And that's where it is. And look, we
have not yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. We beat a couple of these guys into the ground a little bit already this year.
Sure.
In Alec Boehm and Bryson Stott. But that's the reason. And Brandon Marsh has been less than expected so far, and the platoon
is that fair? I mean, I feel like Marsh is kind of giving you what you'd expect. I mean, Marsh hitting again 318 on base percentage. He doesn't walk, but like a couple homers. He's hitting 290, 770 OPS. Like that's Brandon Marsh. Like
I guess
to me, it's about Boehm. It's about Stott. You got to get a little bit more from Turner. And then one of the things that's kind of gone under the radar is that when you scope out the Phillies outfield, like you're getting what you thought you'd get from Crawford. The average is coming down now, 283. It's still in the zone of what I expected. Garcia's been a tick below what I would have liked to have seen thus far, but again, not unreasonable. One of the things, and I know it's only been, 20 plate appearances, but you're not getting anything when Marsh doesn't play in left field. I mean,
Otto Kemp, yes.
Abysmal. And again, I know you got to get him more at bats. You got to get him into a little bit of a rhythm or try to, but he's given them absolutely nothing. Yeah. And I don't know if that's a surprise per se. Like, I don't know that Otto Kemp has enough of a track record or deserves the benefit of the doubt, but like that's a concern out there. Part of the reason when you look at their performance against lefties, he's giving you nothing. Alec Boehm's giving you nothing. You just can't have this many zeros.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the solution that, we talked about, like, well, maybe you go with somebody else that's down in the minors. And we, everybody thought maybe Brian De La Cruz. He's been terrible.
Yeah.
At AAA. The guy that's hitting is Felix Reyes, and they're trying to turn him into a left fielder. But I'm not certain that that's a thing that you're going to do. To me, right? Like, you don't have that guy right now.
And that's what kills me. And when you talk about the offseason and you talk about running it back and all the criticisms of this front office, if there are, criticisms, you should not be in a position where you need to try to convert Felix Reyes on the fly, who's on a heater, into your right-handed left field solution. Like, that's not what you – when you're talking about trying to break down the last wall and win a championship, like this is not the position that you should find yourself in on April 17th. And yet, like for me, it feels somewhat predictable. It feels familiar and it feels predictable. And it's frustrating that they're in this position where they just don't really have many viable alternatives. And I don't know what the solution is. Like, to be honest with you, do I think that the Phillies are going to figure it out? I do. Do I think they're going to win 90? What did I say at the beginning of the year? 92 games? I don't know that I'm that far off, where I'd start to move that projection. Maybe it's 90, maybe it's 88. I still think it's a playoff team. But do I really believe in Otto Kemp? Like, no, I don't. I certainly don't believe in Alec Boehm. So to me, you're going to continue to have these problems. Like, I don't see a situation where this offense meaningfully moves forward and becomes a more consistent product. I think that more or less you're going to find them you take all the key statistics, all the key categories offensively, and I think that you're going to find them anywhere between 12 and 20 in most of them. They're not going to be top 10. They might not be bottom 10, but I think that they're just going to be middle of the pack and everything. And that, unless you have anything else you want to add to that, brings me to the pitching, which is what has been surprisingly bad. And I know that there are some reasons for optimism. So, let's get into this a little bit here.
Yeah.
All right. So just a few things about the Phillies. We talked about the Braves pitching injuries, right? And it's funny that they're in here this week. They're playing really well. They're 12-7. They're rolling right now. They have gotten absolutely phenomenal pitching despite a rash of injuries. They have a 2.93 ERA as a team. Phillies, meanwhile, have a 4.92 ERA, almost 2 runs worse. They're 26th in all of baseball. So where's the reason for optimism? You look at their expected ERA as a team, the Phillies, it's 3.38. It's third.
Yeah.
Fielding independent, 307. It's second in all of baseball. Phillies pitching staff is third in wins above replacement per Fangraphs this year. Like, they're striking out a ton of hitters. They're not walking a ton of hitters. Batting average of balls in play has been astronomical. Like, this is the thing. When I was going through this, like the damage today, this is the one that really jumps off the page at me. Opponents are hitting 359 against Phillies pitching this year. 359, Anthony. This is a league in which you can't even hit 300. Like, you're talking about 359 batting average of balls in play. The next is Houston, 325. It's a 20. What is it? 34-point difference? That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. So I don't want to sit here and say it's been bad luck. Certain guys have not thrown the ball very well, but there is an element of just very bad luck involved in all that.
Yeah, there is. I mean, if you go back to the one Taijuan Walker start where he not one ball, he gave up all those hits, but not one of them.
Yeah, the Washington game, and
was over 100 miles an hour, and only 4, I think, were.
And look, I thought Luzardo stunk the other night.
Luzardo the other night.
To say that he's been good, but he ran into some bad luck the other night. He started to get pounded in between, but there were some flares and dinks and ducks and knuckleballs, and it was a weird start.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff happens, right, Bob? And look, and when you look at the numbers, you say, well, why are they so bad? I mean, you have some outings of guys out of the bullpen that are going to torch those numbers too, like the Seth Johnson appearance, like that kills those numbers a little bit. Alvarado had that blow up early in the season, kills those numbers a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you. But it can't stay that bad. But it's going to get better.
Here's the catch in all of this. The bullpen ERA is 4.66, which is 19th in baseball. Their expected ERA is 2.69, which is first. Yeah. So the luck, you mentioned the Walker start. Luzardo's had some weird luck, some weird innings. But the bad luck in relation to the result is more rooted in the bullpen performance. The real concern for me is the starter ERA this season is 5.11, which is 27th in baseball. And the expected ERA is 3.94, which is still middle of the pack, 15th. It's not like that the starting rotation has run into a ton of bad luck. It's more about the bullpen. So this Phillies team cannot win if their starters are not performing like a top 10 rotation. It's a non-starter. It cannot happen. This offense is too mediocre. The defense is friggin' atrocious, which we haven't even gotten to yet.
Yeah.
If this starting staff cannot pick it up, and they will, I think, then they are in trouble. And that's the one thing that's got me a little bit nervous right now. And I don't know how you digest that.
No, I don't think it's a concern. I just don't. I think Sanchez is going to be fine. I think Luzardo is going to be fine. I think Nola's been what we expected him to be this year, like better than last year, but not vintage Nola, right? Like, so he's going to be that middle of the road guy. It's been the Luzardo, not 3 bad starts. It's been Taijuan Walker's terrible. Like, that's what it's been. And you sit there and go, Wheeler's coming, so that replaces Walker, and Luzardo will figure it out. Like, I'm okay with the starting pitching. I really am. That is my least of my concerns. I know it's the one that you're expressing the most concern about right now, because yes, if that does,
it's the thing that if you showed me all these numbers 3 weeks ago, I'd say, well, offensively, that looks about right. There's nothing that I'm seeing other than, I don't expect Alec Boehm to have a 450 OPS. But individually, most of these numbers, I'm like, okay, like this doesn't stun me, doesn't blow me away. As a team, most of these team statistics, nothing stunning. Right. If you showed me a 5.11 starters ERA through 18 games, I'd say, whoa, that's surprising to me.
Yeah, and it's surprising, but again, 18 games for a starter's ERA is not something that I'm gonna go nuts over. I think that I agree with you that the starting pitching needs to be better for the team to be better because they're not going to hit their way over bad starting pitching, right? So a lot of times you can mask bad hitting with good pitching. This team cannot mask bad pitching with good hitting. They don't have that. They don't have enough consistency in the lineup to do that. So yes, I agree with you that the starting pitching has to be better, or else pack it in.
Yeah.
But I also don't worry about it. The defense is the thing, Bob, that I'm a little perplexed by it. And I'll tell you why I'm perplexed by it, because when you look at the regulars in the lineup and positionally, they should be no worse than average at any position. They should be average to above average at every position. And yet they're minus 17 defensive runs saved through 18 games. Like how does that happen?
Yeah. Let me break out the numbers. So I obviously did a little bit more research today coming into the show because I didn't want to have the same show as Monday, which is like, this team, what do they do well, right? That was the question that I kept asking. So just so everyone has this in front of them, you can watch with your eyes and say this team's been pretty bad defensively. I mean, it's been, and like stupid plays too, careless plays, right? Yeah. Like that's I think one of the biggest frustrations. The other night when things start to spiral on them against the Cubs with Luzardo on the mound, there's a pass ball, or I'm sorry, a wild pitch. There's the throw from Real Muto down to third base, which gets by. It's not a good throw. Bohm can't block it. Gets by Turner. Like the whole thing, it just wasn't. It just has not been a clean product. It's not about like the Nick Castellanos conversation where it's like, well, they can't get to the ball. They're limited in their range. These are like routine baseball 101 type plays that they're not making. But like you mentioned it, depends where you're looking and which defensive run save metric you go by. Negative 16 at Fangraphs. They're dead last in all of baseball. The next worst at Fangraphs is negative 13. Outs above average, the StatCast metric, negative 6. They're 26th in all of baseball by that metric. And we know that defensive metrics are a little bit imperfect. They're a little bit hard to comprehend. But the point being is no matter how you slice it, it's bad. It's bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
When you look at them individually, it's almost stunning. You know who their worst defensive player has been this season based on defensive metrics?
Go ahead.
Bryce Harper.
Really?
Negative 4 defensive runs saved. Negative 5 outs above average. He's been just terrible. I mean, like you look at like where like first baseman's rank. I mean, he's dead last. He's been atrocious based on these metrics. Now, I don't necessarily see that. Like, I don't watch the games and say like Bryce Harper's been a terrible first baseman this year, but it hasn't graded out very well. Real Muto, +1 defensive run saved. He's been fine. Turner, -2, although his outs above average are also -2. So he's been a step below this year. Garcia's kind of just been a wash. He's been okay, 0 and 1. And when I say 0 and 1, I mean defensive run saved, outs above average. Marsh, +2. Boom, kind of been okay actually at third base. Stott, he has the biggest variance. So like defensive run saves -1, outs above average is +4. So again, you just see the variance in these metrics. Crawford though has been stunning. Crawford does not grade out well on defensive run save, -4, and he's -1 outs above average. And again, like I feel like he's done okay out there. I think he's made some nice plays. I know he had one the other night where he was running up against the wall and doesn't come down with it, but like he's been okay. To me, I expect more out of the middle infield. Harper obviously is not doing something right, needs to be better. And I think that the outfield's been very okay.
Yeah, so like when I say it this way, Bob, and I say you look at the player and you look at them playing their position. And if I tell you each player one by one and the position that they play, you pretty much say average to above average defensively, right? Like other than maybe Turner, but he's coming off of a season where he wasn't.
Kemp gives you nothing in left field.
No, but I'm talking about your regulars, your everyday guys, right? So Harper was a Gold Glove finalist last year. Whether he deserved it or not could be debated, but there's enough people who think that he, is decent enough at first.
Certainly, I agree. I mean, he
right?
gives you competent defense at first base.
He's competent at first base. Stott, I think, has been underrated for years as a second baseman. I think he should be a Gold Glove type second baseman, and his numbers are a little, like you said, there's some variance there. Turner is below average at shortstop overall, although he, like I said, coming off of
I appreciate his
really good season
work.
last year.
I appreciate his work. I appreciate the year that he had defensively last year. I still
Yeah.
don't think he's an average shortstop. I think
Right. So as I said, like I still think below average overall. Bohm has made himself a decent third baseman. Not great, but he's not killing you. Garcia is a solid right fielder. We know he's got a gun. We've seen him throw people out all over the field so far this year, right? So he's a decent right fielder. Crawford, I think you described perfectly, but I would say he's at least average so far. And Marsh is really good in left. Like, you should not be, as a team, minus 16 in defensive run. Like, that to me is the problem.
Okay. So that is the problem. So this is where I think people get a little bit of oxygen when they talk about complacency and accountability. Like, these are words that we just hear year in, year out with this team. And I think that the conversation more often than not is an overreaction. It's unfair. I think it's kind of lazy. I truly believe in a lot of cases that, especially with baseball, it's just so easy when things are going wrong to look at the dugout and say, it's the staff's fault. It's the manager's fault. And even now, as underwhelming as they have been, I don't believe that the Phillies should fire Rob Thompson. Like,
whoa, what happened? There you are.
Yeah.
Video guy Amadeo came in to fix everything.
Got it. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that the Phillies should fire Rob Thompson. I think it's unfair. I think there are people listening to this that totally disagree with me and feel like that he should be gone this weekend. And that's fine, because there might be a day very soon where it gets there. You talk about where they should be and what they should be doing. Well, like, they're not. And so I do wonder, is it fair to say that this team has not been focused, that this team is not dialed in the way that they ought to be? And does that have anything to do with, the manager?
No. I think that this is the most ridiculous overreaction that the city turns to all the time. All the time. I think it's absurd. And as I pointed out earlier, Bob, if you just take Luzardo's starts, and let's just imagine Jesus Luzardo pitches the way we expect him to pitch, and they are 10-8 or they are 11-7, whatever the record would be at this point. Right? Are we calling for the manager's head?
No, and you said that earlier on, but he has not pitched that way. They have not made plays. They have looked. I mean, honestly, you and I probably don't see this the same way. You are more rational than I am. There's no question about it. And I'm also not down there anymore. So I started to become more rational the more I covered it in person.
Right.
But I have to kind of speak for the fan here. And I have to tell you, there's nobody. And I mean, I know that you don't disagree with this. They're not playing well. And it is very hard in this moment right now to be like, well, this is acceptable. Or I'm excited to watch the Phillies tonight. This has been a pretty bad product and a pretty boring product too. This team sort of stinks right now, right? They do. And you can say well, if Walker's not making these starts and Wheeler is, I did at the top, you could talk about a thing here or there and they're on pace for 94 wins. True. But if we're sitting here a month from now, the question really becomes at what point does it become fair? Because if we're sitting here a month from now and they're 25-30 and this is what they look like, you can't really do a whole lot here if you're the Phillies. You don't have minor league call-ups. You don't have a lot of money to spend at the deadline. You don't have a whole hell of a lot you can do. And, as much as we say it's not the manager, and I tend to agree with that. You go back to the 22 Phillies, they didn't have a lot of moves up their sleeves at that point, except they fired the manager.
Yeah, but there was
you do it.
I think the difference there is that there were other problems within the organization as far as the manager was concerned. They didn't particularly like playing for.
They didn't like playing for him. He didn't want to be here.
And he didn't want right. I think that was a different kind of scenario. Look, I'll take you back, Bob. Let's remember last April. It might have been around the same date might have been mid-April, 17th ish. I don't remember the exact date, to be honest, but it was around this time. Because I remember I went up to New York and they got their doors blown off by the Mets and they got swept. And I believe at the time they fell 5.5 games behind the Mets. I want to say, I think I'm right on that. I think it was 5.5 games behind the Mets. And everybody had the same reaction then.
Yeah.
Right? Fire the manager. Well, they didn't fire the manager and they went on to win the division and, played a tight series with the Dodgers in the playoffs. I just don't think that this is the time of year that you do this. You just don't. You don't do it now. Like, you've got to give in baseball, you've got to give it time to and look, it might end up getting to a point where you do have to fire the manager, but you can't start talking about it in April. It's asinine to talk about it now. It just is. If you wanted to fire managers for slow starts, 20 teams in baseball right now would fire their manager. Like, you cannot do this. And the fact that this is a talk radio topic and every fan
I brought it up, like, blame me, but like, this is where people are, you know what this is about, right? It's not about 18 games. It's about the whole thing. And that's the problem. I said this in January. I said it in February. I said it 2 weeks ago. The thing about the discourse of this team, around this team, about this team, is that it's not going to be about what you're watching in the moment. It's about all the baggage and all the things that happen leading up to this moment.
And here's the thing. And I had this discussion with Bob Cooney this morning, right? Because we were talking about the Sixers in the playoffs. And the Sixers had a nice play-in game win over Orlando. The crowd was on fire, and everybody's excited, and whatever. And why are fans excited about the Sixers? Well, because it's no Joel Embiid. Yeah. Now they're going to end up with the same result. They're going to get their ass kicked by the Boston Celtics, right? They're not going to win that series, and they're going to end up with the same result. But fans are more willing to accept the same result if it looks different, right? And the fact is right now the familiarity is what's breeding the contempt of the fan, and that's it. But I will argue that if you have players that you believe in, and you think that over the course of time, they are going to continue to be the best possible players, I'd rather go to battle with that than go to battle with an unknown just because it's different. You know what I'm saying? Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't make changes on this team. I certainly would. I would make a change at third base. I would make a change with your second left fielder. I would make a couple other changes like for those, and those should have been addressed already, right? I'm with the fans on this, on those. But I'm not ready to tear down, to blow up the manager or fire the hitting coach or like what. I don't see the value in doing that today. Go look at the records of every team in baseball right now. There's maybe 3 that go, okay, yeah, good start. And then there's 27 where it's like mediocre to bad. Like, it's what the sport is right now. We've gotten to a point, and I think we talked about this before. NFL kind of destroyed the preseason. The training camps aren't as hard as they used to be. Preseason games, nobody plays them anymore. So the beginnings of seasons tend to be like an extended training camp for football teams. Baseball has kind of followed in this suit where spring training doesn't matter for veteran players anymore. It just doesn't. And April tends to become like an extended spring training for these teams. I think we now have to really hold off these questions and hold off these conversations about change until May. Whereas before you maybe could do it before. Now I think you have to wait till closer to Memorial Day before.
Yeah, I think if we're sitting here 5 weeks from now and it looks like, and I said this before, it's not necessarily 8 and 10. It's the way it's looked.
Yeah,
so
I'm with you on
here, that. And they are, we're 55, 60 games into this, and it looks the same. It looks, there's like this apathy, sloppy mistakes, lack of focus, underperformance across the board. Like, then I think you start to have that conversation.
Right. Because at that point, and this is why I'm saying to everybody, just wait a second. Because at that point, it's been going on for a long enough time, and your manager and his staff have not fixed it, right? if players are playing poorly, making stupid mistakes, there's a little bit of apathy, if that's what we want to say. You got to give the staff time to say, okay, how do we adjust? How do we fix this? How do we rectify this? You can't just make a change at the first sign of it, right? So that's why I'm saying to everybody, I think it's an overreaction. And you may ultimately be right if you are a supporter of changing the manager. You ultimately may be right. At some point in the future, you're going to be right because Rob Thompson's not going to manage the Phillies forever. So at some point, you're going to be right. That doesn't mean that you're right now. That's all. That's all I push back against. I just don't think that you do it at this moment.
All right, I'm with you on that. There's a few different guys I just want to kind of quickly touch on that we haven't talked about yet. Yeah. I'm just curious. The other night, Brad Keller comes into a game and has an opportunity to kind of like stop the bleeding, right? And he doesn't. And the first batter comes up, 2-run single, and the doors swing wide open. Is Brad Keller going to get anybody out when it matters this season?
I know he's been a concern for me. And I look at, and the reason, Bob, he's been a concern for me is, and he had a great season last year with the Cubs. There's no question about it. But it was his only great season. And I just wonder if it was one of those years where you get a guy that has that year and he just cashes in on it and is never that guy again.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one that I look at and go, if Brad Keller can't figure this out, that was a big miss for the Phillies because they banked on a lot with him coming in making that bullpen better. Getting rid of Matt Strahm for Jonathan Bolin, for example. Like you probably don't do that if you know Brad Keller is not going to be good. And I know that one's a lefty, one's a righty, whatever, but you probably don't take a good arm, solid arm out of your bullpen to take a chance on a younger pitcher if you think Brad Keller is less than what he was a year ago. So yeah, it's that to me could be a big swing and miss. That could be a concern. I'm with you on that one. That's another one of those positions where I'm like, that could go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, 69 2/3 innings last year. He only allowed 45 hits. Opponents hit 182 against him. He had a .96 whip. So far this season, opponents hitting 256 against him. So that's obviously way up. 258 against him, 1.3 whip. 7 2/3 has at this moment a 4.70 ERA, and again, a couple inherited runners have scored on him, and it's not been great. One of the strengths I thought this team was bringing into this season was that bridge to Duran in the back, and right now that bridge has been shaky between both he and Jose Alvarado, and then obviously now Bolin's on the injured list. I mean, when you have an offense, it's kind of doing what you expected, and some of the starting pitching issues that they've had. Like this was one thing that I really thought coming in that they'd be solidified with, and they haven't. And I am concerned about this. Like this is a true area of concern for me.
Yeah, it is, and I'm with you on this one. I really am, and I think that look, they got to figure out a way to get back. And guys have done it. I mean, guys have got off to rough starts in the beginning of seasons and in bullpen and turned it around. But yeah, right now it's. I don't know. Other than Duran and Kerkering, I mean, I know it's hard to rip Mesa because he was great until one rough outing. But
yeah, he struggled.
Like, other than those guys, like, has anybody in the bullpen impressed you so far?
No.
And it's funny because you pointed out that their expected ERA is still pretty good, that they are striking some guys out. So there's at least some underlying numbers that make you feel a little bit better. But eye test is telling me it's not as impressive as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. So here you go. Here come the Atlanta Braves, who've played very well this season, and they'll throw Martin Perez tonight against Taijuan Walker. I love that. Hey, big series down at the bank tonight. Phillies need to get up off the mat. They've already lost 3 series at home this year. You've heard that a million times this week. They only lost 3 series at home all of last season. I mean, this is not an ideal starting pitching matchup for the Phillies, given that Perez throws a baseball with his left arm. And then tomorrow night you get Chris Sale up against Sanchez, which is a premier pitching matchup. where I'm going with this, they're going to see two lefties. Who's playing third base this weekend for the Phillies against these left-handed starters?
It's probably going to be Bohm because you're probably going to get Sosa at second.
My question is, are we at a point where, and I know that Bryson Stott has not performed this season, but given where Alec Bohm seems to be both mentally and with where he's at the plate, are we ready to kind of flip this thing over and say, like, let's have Sosa take the bulk of starts and we can work Bohm in and maybe we can slowly get him going rather than just say he's our guy and we got to
I do think that's the case, Bob. I do think that the Phillies are thinking about giving Edmundo a longer run at third base. I don't know if it's a straight platoon situation where Bohm is in only against lefties, but I do think you're going to see kind of a hybridized usage. And maybe tonight's the night to give. And I don't know. I haven't, the lineup's not out yet, but maybe tonight's the night to let Bryson Stott play against a lefty and just see. Maybe you don't want him to do it against you don't want him to go up against Sale, who throws a lot harder. So, if you're going to give it a shot, maybe it's tonight against Martin Perez.
What's interesting, by the way, is the Phillies are an underdog tonight. It's minus 115 Braves. Phillies are minus 105. One of the things I wanted to point out at the beginning of the show that sort of got away from me is, if you remember, and our viewer, listener Ford pointed this out to me on Twitter this week. He's like, don't think I forgot that you said that they were going to sweep the Cubs, and I was certainly wrong about that. Part of the reason why
I was wrong too.
Yeah, I know you had 2 out of 3, right? Well, part of the reason I like them is because of how good they've been historically at home, and I feel like, though, that I might not get it to down to the decimal on how they're going to perform in a given series. Generally, I feel like I know the flow of this team, and coming off of a horrible loss on Sunday, a series loss to the Diamondbacks, they tend to play pretty well against the Cubs. Nola has a good track record against the Cubs. I thought they'd get the first one. I thought Nola would give them a little bit more. He wasn't terrible, but I thought he'd give them more on Tuesday night. They get out to the 3-0 lead. And then I thought Luzardo was going to have that bounce back game. And that's why I kind of thought they'd sweep them, to be honest with you. That was where I was at. The reason why I mentioned the odds tonight is because the Phillies are in a little bit of an unfamiliar spot as an underdog. Not only have the Phillies been underwhelming this season, playing an 8-10 record, but they've also been favored in almost every game.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, we talked about before the season, this April schedule's challenging. It's not like you're getting a ton of cupcakes, but there have been some cupcakes mixed in here. And they haven't really taken advantage of that the way that you'd expect them to. And not that, Arizona's obviously a scrappy team. They don't have for a lot of power, but they can do some things. Chicago's supposed to be in the mix. Like, these aren't teams that you're supposed to just take the brooms out and beat them over the head with it. But, like, these are series the Phillies typically win. And I was surprised they didn't get that bounce back. And I'm hoping that they kind of pull one here this weekend where they show up and show you that, like, hey, we're not going to let this thing get too far away from us where we find ourselves down 5-6 games all of a sudden. This is a very tough matchup this weekend against a team that's playing very, very well.
Yeah, it is. And, obviously you don't love the pitching matchup tonight. They need Christopher Sanchez to be the guy he was last year in that start Saturday against Sale. And then Sunday, Sunday's a game that I think that the Phillies can have an advantage. Braves have never seen Andrew Painter, right? So a lot of times, the first time you get to go up against a pitcher, even if you're going well as an offense, it could take him a minute. And I'm not a huge Grant Holmes guy. Like I mean, he's been serviceable for them for the last couple of years, but he's certainly hittable. So it's an important series. I'm not saying they have to win the series. I mean, even if you lose 2 out of 3, you're disappointed, but it's not the end of the world. You just can't go in there and get your doors blown off, right? You gotta at least show up a little bit. And so, like, yeah. I mean, I don't expect him to win tonight just because it's Walker.
It's like weird. If the Phillies were swinging a little bit better against lefties overall, I'd be a little bit more optimistic. I mean, like, Perez has had a strong start, and he didn't pitch a ton last year, but 56 innings. He was pretty decent last year with the White Sox. But, like, historically speaking, like, I appreciate the guy's hung around for over a decade, but, like, this isn't, like, lights out stuff. Now, his numbers this year have been very good and whipped below 1 in 3 starts. But, you'd like to think to yourself, all right, maybe there's an opportunity for some regression here. They finally start to hit against lefties. maybe Walker's functional enough, then the bullpen starts to lock it up a little bit and they find the way to get the first one. But, going into any of these 3 games, you don't feel like overwhelmingly confident that they're in a great spot. So,
yeah. I'm going to be interesting to see how Walker starts because, look, there was some conversation after his last start about, getting him hot in the bullpen, like actually simulating a full inning and have an up down. Like, I know it's weird, but
I love it. I mean, like, try it. I'm not faulting the Phillies for trying to get creative here, but I personally believe it really just kind of comes back to the fact that this guy's not very good. And it's stunning to me. If you would have asked 2023 Bob Wankel, would Taijuan Walker be making starts for the 2026 Phillies? Like by the end of 23, middle of 24, I would have said no way in hell. Right.
Right.
And here they are in this spot. So
yeah. I mean, they got to try something because his first innings have been absolutely atrocious. And, I mean, I just think that's they need that. If they could find a way to navigate 5 innings with Taijuan Walker and he doesn't give up more than 3 runs, I think you take it as a shot to win the game tonight. You have a shot to win the game tonight.
All right. Look,
they got to hit a lefty pitcher. I mean, that's more for me where I sit there and go, I don't see it. I don't see how they do it.
Yeah, because they're going to what? They're going to bench Marsh, right? And they're going to go to Kemp. And then, I mean, is Crawford in the lineup or do they let Marsh go play center? What are they going to do here? Do you just roll with Crawford? And
they probably
do what they do.
Yeah, I mean, they sat him the other, what game was it that he didn't play? There was one game against the Cubs he didn't play, right?
Yeah, I believe the finale he didn't start.
Right. So I can't imagine that they have him sit
again,
right? So I think that's the case, that Marsh probably sits, yes.
All right, well, look, I mean, obviously it's been a pretty rough week for the Phillies. One thing that they do have working in their favor is that their owner did not tweet the following: "Nobody likes to lose, but I saw some green shoots tonight. On offense, Lindor had 2 hits, including a home run. Bichette got a double, hitting it to left field as opposed to recently being right field prone. What's his name? Benji got a solid hit. Soto started his running progression today. Simeon hit a shot that might have been a home run on a warmer night. Finally, Nolan McLean pitched an outstanding game, going 7 innings. Hang in there. We will turn this around." What an embarrassing tweet in what has been an embarrassing season for a team that, again, like if you're going to say that the Phillies, it's early and they're going to get it together, you can't say that the Mets won't because they might. And there is some talent there, but holy shit. It's been a rough start for the Mets.
Yes, it has. And look, I'm not going to sit here and crow about it because I agree with you. I think that they will figure it out a little bit too. They are, as much as I didn't believe in the Mets hype coming into the season, I also readily admit that I think that they will be a little bit better than they were a year ago. So I too am not going to sit there and say, "See, I told you so. The Mets stink," because the Mets are going to get better, just like the Phillies are going to get better. But I agree. Like, just don't say anything. Don't say Stevie, Uncle Stevie. Don't say anything. Let's not say anything.
You take anything away? I know we're on, running out of time here. You take anything away from that series? And I mean, look, one thing that is a little bit disheartening, and I meant to say this earlier, we kind of all feel like it's the Dodgers and everybody else.
Yeah.
And the season starts and it looks like the Dodgers and everybody else. And what's really disheartening, I think, when you look big picture, is that the Dodgers are 14-4 right now. And some of their dudes aren't even playing that well. Man, that team looks like it's ready to rip off 110 plus wins. They're scary right now. Yeah, they've always been, but they're really scary right now.
Yeah, they are. But is anybody else?
No, but the Phillies don't. That's the problem, Anthony. It's not about everybody else. It's about the Phillies, and it's about winning a championship, and that is one hell of a roadblock out there.
It's a big roadblock. There's no doubt about it. But do you ever get the sense that the Phillies look at the Dodgers and go, "We can't beat that team"?
No, that's one thing I'll say about the Phillies. I think that there's a confidence that going into a series, they're not going to be overwhelmed. I think that they showed last year to some degree that they're capable of hanging, at least from a pitching perspective. You can't say that the Phillies are capable of hitting the Dodgers because they didn't. Right. But you can say that the pitching is good enough. So, yeah, going into a series, I think the Phillies could talk themselves into, like, we can get these guys.
Yeah. So that's, and I think that's all that they need to think. That doesn't mean
that you talk about like Wheeler, Sanchez, like the Yamamoto Ohtani thing right now. If those guys both stay healthy, like, good God.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how what the Phillies do to fix themselves to get to where they need to get to face that Dodgers team. I still think that ultimately that's going to be your NLCS. I do. But I don't think
people will say that this is a pessimistic podcast.
Yes. Yeah,
but here you are after the first 3 weeks and everything that's happened, saying that this is your NLCS matchup still with confidence, and I like that. That's good. The people need some reassurance.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes you just need to be more practical.
I think that's fair. You said familiarity breeds contempt. That's something I said on the show a few times last year.
Yeah, but it's the truth. It's the truth. It's what it is. So, all right, Bob, I want to get to one last thing because I do have to run. I've gotten 4 alerts that my Uber driver is on his way. So,
very well.
Anyway, here we go. I want to name 3 players, and I want you to tell me who the 4th player is on a list. Okay. Jimmy Fox, Darrell Evans, George Bell, and one other guy that's current.
You know that I have no idea.
Mike Trout.
Okay. The 5 home runs in a series.
Yeah, against the Yankees. Became just the 4th player to ever hit 5 home runs in a series against the Yankees. He may not be a 300 hitter anymore, but I think Mike Trout is going to have a season.
Yeah, I should have known this because I was looking at his baseball reference page this morning. I was wondering if Mike Trout was going to come up on this show. Would you like Mike Trout in the Phillies outfield right now?
I think anybody would take that the way he's hitting right now. Yeah,
he's swinging it.
Yeah, I do. I think if Mike Trout, again, he's got to stay healthy, but if he stays healthy, I think he's a 40 home run guy this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, his OPS is over 1,000. I believe he's hitting I think I saw earlier 246, but his home base percentage is like 417.
Yeah, it's craziness.
Come on, man.
It's craziness. So
yeah, I know. I mean, that's one of the best stories in baseball right now for me. I mean, I know you can do the whole like Russ does he's overrated and he's a loser because he doesn't want to leave the Angels and all that stuff, like the trolling Russ thing. But he is. Like, I'm glad for him because I think people have like sort of forgotten about him a little bit, and he's put himself back on the radar firmly this season.
Yeah, for sure. He absolutely has. And that's good. It's good for baseball. It's good for baseball. Because he has been kind of a forgotten about superstar. And if he can have like that renaissance season this year, it'd be great.
I know that we all like joke about it. We talked about it for a couple of years, and like WIP did the whole shtick a couple of years ago, like come home, Mike, and all that stuff. But could you imagine if he's playing well and he's healthy, and like it gets down to the deadline, and the Angels are kind of out of contention, like you would have thought they'd been. Like, like you talk about this team being like stagnant and stale, and the vibes kind of being like dial tone-ish right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a injection of life that would be.
It would change the
everything. People would be banging down the door. I mean, they're obviously attendance has been really good, but I mean, it would just create like a fervor almost.
100%. It really would. It really would. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. I got to run. I got to go take a train out to Pittsburgh. But thanks for tuning in, everyone. Don't forget, you can find us anywhere you get your podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora. Best place to find us right here on YouTube, youtube.com/@Phightin Words. Click the thumbs up, ring the bell. You'll always know when Bob and I go live. So for Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony Sanfilippo saying thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the playoffs this weekend with Flyers Saturday, Sixers on Sunday, Phillies games all 3 days. And Bob and I will talk to you Monday. I'll be tuning in from Pittsburgh. I'll be out in Pittsburgh at my hotel the next time we do this. But Bob and I will be catch you up on the Phillies Braves and look ahead to the road trip that comes up next week for the Phillies in Chicago and Atlanta. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great weekend.